it depends on the date. I think they've been having like they hit like never really got it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, every day it's last night was fine. The night before that, I probably like an hour or so.
Are you talking about the boy being crazy?
Yeah.
Shut that off for a second.
I'd like to call the meeting of the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Judiciary to order. I want to welcome our members on the subcommittee, ready to kick things off for another budget season. Looking forward to working with you all as we did last year. We won't prolong the time. Clerk, please take the attendance.
Chair Wilson.
Present.
Representatives Weiss.
Here.
Brixey.
Here.
Menser.
Here.
Morgan.
Here.
Leitner. Here. Cabot.
Here.
Shooty.
Here.
Mr. Chair, would you clear the table?
Thank you. Representative Weiss moves to amend the minutes from the subcommittee meeting held on April 19th, 2023. Hearing no objection, the minutes are adopted. At this time, we're so grateful to have our guest here today to make a presentation to us. We know that your time is very valuable, and we won't prolong the time. We'll let you kick things off. I'd like to introduce the Honorable Chief Judge of the Michigan Supreme Court, Elizabeth Clement.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Wilson, Majority Vice Chair Weiss, and Minority Vice Chair Leitner, and the members of the subcommittee for this opportunity to discuss the recommended budget for fiscal year 2025. I would like to begin by thanking the governor and her staff and the State Budget Office for their continued support and appreciation of the needs of the judicial branch. I would also like to thank several people on our team who have done the difficult work leading up to today. With me at the table is our State Court Administrator, Tom Boyd, and in the audience is our General Counsel, Alicia Moon, Deputy General Counsel, Trevor Van Dyke, and our Budget Officer, Casey Harold. In addition to all of their great work, I would like to thank our incredible team at the State Court Administrative Office. I am grateful for each and every one of them and the work they do day in and day out, engaging with all of our local courts, judges and court staff who serve the people of our state as they navigate the judicial branch of government. Me and my colleagues are also incredibly grateful for the tremendous support that the judicial branch of government has received from this subcommittee. I'll turn my attention to the slides that we have in our presentation. As it says in this slide, we are focused on an overarching goal, an innovative, transparent, and efficient justice system that works for everyone. If we learned anything during the pandemic, it is that courts can be innovative and creative, and that change is possible. That commitment to innovation cuts across everything that we do. Transparency making the public see what we are doing and why is critically important, because transparency is a necessary condition for there to be trust. And efficiency, that is a no-brainer. Courts must be prudent guardians of public resources, only spending what's necessary to get the job done. Here are the highlights of what we will be going over today. For the most part, I will be talking about projects that have already been funded. My goal is to give you a high-level view of some of the key items we are working on to better serve the people of Michigan. Highlighted in blue in the slide are the items we are asking for you to fund. As you can see in this agenda, I'm going to devote a large portion of this presentation to technology projects. And at the end, I want to make you aware of several outreach initiatives. These initiatives are vitally important because they build public trust in our judicial system. Michigan's judicial branch has been laser focused on fiscal responsibility. Last year, when I presented to the Legislative Appropriations Subcommittees, the Michigan Supreme Court and the State Court Administrative Office proposed about $21.5 million in potential increases to the judiciary budget. For fiscal year 2025, the MSC and scale are asking for 71% less. Today, I will highlight proposals that make up the lion's share of additional spending of about $6.28 million. As we have in the past, the judiciary branch very much understands the need to adjust our budget to financial conditions. For example, we tightened our belts substantially during the pandemic. This budget could be described as steady as you go, keeping the judiciary on course toward our goals of transparency, innovation, and efficiency. The first overarching message I want you to take away from this presentation is that technology is the catalyst to pretty much everything that we do in the judiciary. Technology helps us improve service to the public. Think more online services like e-filing or text message notices. Technology increases public access. Think virtual hearings and web-based legal self-help. Technology improves court efficiency. Think electronic document management. Technology improves decision-making. Think real-time data analytics. Technology engages and informs the public. Think online data dashboards. Technology helps to implement policy decisions. Think of clean slate, and more about that later. The first technology project is the most important, both to the courts and to the public, and has the most resources devoted to its success. Reaching the remaining 20% of trial courts is the holy grail of court management in Michigan. Our Judicial Information Services team is providing all trial courts with an entirely web-based case management experience. And because of your support, we now have funding to enable us to provide the JIS case management system at no cost to trial courts and have eliminated user fees. The key fact I want to bring to your attention is how carefully we are planning what is the most significant administrative advancement for courts in a generation. As you can see noted in the slide, the first step was asking the National Center for State Courts if building on our Judicial Information System, CMS, was the path. The answer was a resounding yes. We are aligning our CMS plans with priorities developed by the Michigan Judicial Council, which includes a broad range of stakeholders. We are carefully refining and building out a detailed strategic plan for onboarding of additional courts as well as staffing and governance. At the same time, and this is very important, our JIS team is improving the platform on a regular basis. Before I detail what we need to continue forward with this project, I want to step back and provide some history. This slide highlights the budget history of this project. Most importantly, I want to note how appreciative the judiciary is of your support. You are helping to transform our branch of government, make it more efficient, more data-driven, and more able to meet the needs of the public. Remember, this is by far the biggest project on our plates. In this regard, I have two important points. First, the trial courts statewide were thrilled with the current year's funding that allowed the elimination of the JIS user fee. And second, I want to emphasize that we have always made it clear that we will need ongoing funding, and we are only asking for that funding and those FTEs as the system expands and the need grows. So what do we need this year to keep the project on track? In fiscal year 2025, Scale requests an additional 19 FTEs and $4.6 million in ongoing funds to support the development and maintenance of the new system. The next technology project I want to highlight is the rollout of e-filing and electronic document management to all Michigan trial courts. Statewide case management, e-filing, and electronic document management are the most significant technological advancements in at least a generation. We are overcoming a huge challenge to link different systems on a shared platform. E-filing allows users to file anytime from anywhere, and electronic document management allows courts to reduce the hassle of paper files. At the end of 2023, we had 56 new standard MyFile courts, along with 5 pilots and 3 model courts. Currently, 12 district courts are actively onboarding, and 3 probate courts are. The number of filers registered for MyFile grew by more than 20% in 2023. The bottom line, nearly 2.2 million documents were e-filed in 2023. That number will continue to grow because as we learn, we are adding courts faster while at the same time adding case types. As I mentioned before, technology is critically important to implementing the policy initiatives that the governor and legislature authorize. For example, as required by clean slate statutes, we undertook a successful 18-month effort to implement automatic set-aside of qualifying criminal convictions in our case management system. The result? More than 3.6 million adult and juvenile convictions set aside to date, helping affected individuals go to school, get jobs, buy houses. Since some individuals had more than one offense, the initiative helped 2.2 million people by clearing at least one conviction. Adult set-aside required substantial coordination with the Michigan State Police to process felony set-asides. In this case, for adults, there are about 58,000 people with at least one felony case that was set aside. We had to provide new functionality and reporting and train staff at over 180 courts before laws took effect. And we leveraged cutting-edge business intelligence tools for the reporting requirements. I am so proud of our team at Scale for getting this done. I would like to take a minute to drill into the data here with respect to juvenile clean slate, or as the legislation is called, clean slate for kids. 2 key points. First, as you can see in the slide, since January 1st of 2024, more than 340,000 juvenile charges and tickets have been automatically set aside. That means for more than 120,000 kids, their record is truly a clean slate. That could be life-changing for them, the key to education, to jobs, to loans, and more. Second, I want to emphasize how proud I am of the work our IT team did to very quickly create this data reporting framework and to train courts on how to report. This is cutting-edge transparency and just the kind of data we need to support our work to reform juvenile justice. You may all know that juvenile justice reform is at the top of my to-do list. That's why this next item is a priority. I'm talking about the implementation of a $10 million juvenile data management system grant. This grant from the Bureau of Justice Statistics is to collect post-adjudication supervision information on youth. Our plan is to provide access to the system at no cost to all trial courts and create infrastructure for consistent and timely collection of juvenile probation information. Data will include demographics, court case information, risks and needs assessment, service orders, and probation case level information. Most important of all, this project will support and assess implementation of ongoing juvenile justice system reforms. We need to know if we are getting it right. The last technology initiative I want to discuss is how the judiciary has embraced remote proceedings. Providing this convenience to litigants is incredibly popular, and it's popular with the public as well. Just consider the numbers. More than 11.4 million hours of remote proceedings since April of 2020, when the pandemic started. There are currently about 250,000 hours per month. The public has used virtual courtroom directory more than 830,000 times, and local trial court YouTube channels have 370,000 subscribers. A recent nationwide poll conducted by the National Center for State Courts indicated that nearly 2/3 of respondents said they would probably or definitely take advantage of video proceedings if available. The gap on this issue among older respondents is also falling. Michigan is ahead of the curve and building on our record of success. So that's it for technology. The next proposal is all about supporting judges and protecting their safety and the security of their families. We are proposing investment of $475,000 and 1 FTE to remove judicial personal information from the internet. Here is why this is so needed. Threats and inappropriate communications against the judiciary has significantly increased over the recent years. In combating this trend, the federal government and many states are providing protection for judges' personal, identifiable information. In today's volatile political climate of increasing threats and attempts to harm public officials, judges are no exception. By the very nature of their work, judges are called upon to interact directly with individuals, some of whom are likely to be dissatisfied with the outcome. This direct interaction with litigants results in increased risks to the personal safety of judges. For example, in 2015, the U.S. Marshals Service reported 926 threats and inappropriate communications against federal judges, prosecutors, and court officials. In 2021, that figure rose to over 4,500, an increase of almost 490%. States across the nation are enacting legislation to protect PII and otherwise working to ensure this information is protected following the tragic murder of Daniel, the 20-year-old son of federal judge Esther Salas. The gunman was a former litigant who found the judge's personal information online and went to their home and posed as a delivery man when he shot and killed Daniel. We must do everything in our power to prevent a tragedy like this from happening in Michigan. While I am talking about judges, just a quick note about some adjustments to funding for judicial salaries. For example, on this slide, you will see our request for a little over $305,000 to fund additional judgeships. In 2023, Public Act 310 and 311 added a probate judge to Macomb County and a district judge to Kent County. Scale's workload analysis supported the need for adding each of these judgeships. These proposed funds are necessary to implement the partial year costs. In addition, we are requesting $166,000 to implement the State Officers Compensation Commission's SOC 2023 recommendations. SOC recommended 7% increases to salaries for the justices in both 2025 and 2026, and that they receive a $10,000 expense allowance. The case for these recommendations is very strong. For example, in a national survey prepared by the National Center for State Courts, Michigan currently ranks 40th in Supreme Court salaries. Since 2016, the Michigan Court of Appeals judges have received cost of living adjustments while justices have not. Michigan Court of Appeals judges' salaries already exceed those of the justices, and this gap will reach nearly 9% by 2026. Michigan Supreme Court salaries are also 19% less than the current regional mean of over $223,000 in neighboring states of Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Indiana, and Illinois. This slide highlights a request for 3 critically important FTEs. This staffing will provide additional capacity across scale, including in the Councils and Commissions office to provide much-needed support for the Commission on Well-being in the Law, advance access to justice for low-income individuals, and other consensus-based initiatives to make our courts more transparent, more innovative, and more efficient. In particular, regarding access to justice, this has long been a bipartisan, if not a nonpartisan, issue. In this regard, Justice for All Commission is co-chaired by Justice Brian Zara, and the JFA has been very successful in developing a consensus agenda to achieve their ambitious goal of 100% access to Michigan's civil justice system. We are incredibly grateful for funding that has already been provided, for example, to allow for the expansion of legal self-help centers statewide. And I am pleased to report that an alliance of self-help centers was launched last year to share resources and best practices and to improve data collection. Now, the compelling need for a behavioral health administrator to support trial courts. As you can see in this slide, addressing behavioral health disorders is central to the quality of life, to making neighborhoods safer, and any number of other measures. An estimated 70% of individuals in the criminal justice system have a behavioral health disorder. The Michigan Judicial Council has identified behavioral health improvements as a key strategic initiative. Improved criminal and civil justice response to individuals with behavioral health issues is a top priority for the Governor's Mental Health Diversion Council. National task forces recommend courts appoint a behavioral health administrator to improve and develop court responses. There's absolutely no question in my mind that courts statewide need this support and that it will make a huge difference. While we are on the topic of behavioral health, this is a perfect opportunity to talk about the success of Michigan's more than 200 problem-solving courts. They tackle behavioral health head-on. In this slide, I have a preview of the fiscal year 23 problem-solving court report that we will be sending you in a couple of months. For example, drug court graduates are 4 times less likely to be convicted of a new offense within 3 years. 99% of mental health court graduates experience an improvement in their mental health. And among graduates of Veterans Treatment Court, an 82% drop in unemployment. These are just a few of the amazing statistics. The last topic I would like to talk about today tackles the most fundamental challenge facing our courts, earning and building the trust of the people we serve. A critical step to building trust is community engagement and outreach. The efforts help the court better understand the community and help the community better understand the court. To this end, the Michigan Supreme Court is actively involved in outreach initiatives to connect with residents across the state. I'd like to provide a brief overview of some of the important work the court undertakes, including Michigan Adoption Day, Reunification Day, the Court Community Connections, and the Child Legal Representation Task Force Listening Tour. First, one of my favorites, Michigan Adoption Day. In this slide, the 2 images on the right are from our Adoption Day report. This year's creative theme is inspired by Action Comics because you can't get any more heroic than the families providing temporary or forever homes to Michigan children. As part of Michigan Adoption Month, the MSC hosts a special event where adoption finalizations from courts across Michigan are conducted alongside our child welfare and juvenile justice liaisons. We also present awards to both families and child welfare professionals for their outstanding contributions to Michigan's children and families. The event helps to raise awareness about children in need of forever homes. One day a year, courtrooms all across Michigan are filled with smiles, teddy bears, and tears of joy. Please join us this November and urge your local courts to participate if they don't already. Next, Reunification Day, which is just as special and inspiring. To celebrate the efforts of judges, court staff, child welfare professionals, and parents statewide in reuniting foster children with their families, we host an annual picnic luncheon and program. This event is sponsored by the Michigan Supreme Court, MDHHS, Michigan Federation for Children and Families, and our State Court Administrative Office, Child Welfare and Juvenile Justice Services Division, and the Michigan Court Improvement Program. Usually held during the month of June, parents and family members share their success stories of reunification, with particular emphasis on the vital role played by courts, communities, professionals, volunteers, and partners in strengthening and supporting families for reunification. The stories that are told at Reunification Day are so emotional and powerful. Again, I urge you to attend and to encourage your local courts to host their own events. Next is another one of my favorites. In addition to holding oral arguments at the Michigan Hall of Justice in Lansing, twice a year our justices and staff participate in the Court Community Connections program. Launched in 2007 to educate the public, this program particularly targets high school students and is one of our most significant outreach initiatives. In 2023, the court visited Sheboygan and Flint, where over 800 children attended briefings, debriefings by our commissioner's office, watched an oral argument, and engaged in question and answer sessions with arguing attorneys. By involving the public, we foster trust in the judiciary, essential for our democracy. Moreover, we aim to inspire students to pursue legal careers or just have a better understanding of our branch of government. This April will mark the 29th occasion the court has traveled to hear a case on the road away from Lansing. We are headed to Cass County. The final outreach initiative I want to highlight is different than the others in that it was focused on a specific policy issue, improving legal representation for children and parents involved in child protective proceedings. This crisis stems from insufficient funding, competition from other legal systems, and the complexities of these proceedings, leading to inconsistent and unequal legal representation for families in urban and rural areas. In addition to numerous online sessions held via Zoom, Justice Kyra Bolden led an in-person listening session in Detroit, while Justice Megan Kavanaugh traveled to Cadillac, Sault Ste. Marie, Marquette, and Gogebic County to gather input from a wide range of stakeholders, including parents, children, attorneys, judges, and welfare caseworkers. Later this spring, the task force is expected to produce a report with recommendations for the Michigan Supreme Court, the governor, and the legislature. I am confident that the public input provided at these outreach sessions will make that report a must-read and a call to action. So I know we have given you much to think about, but I feel strongly that if you take away just one message from this presentation, please remember this. Trust is the only currency that courts have. And the projects I talked about today to help our justice system be more innovative, more transparent, and more efficient all help to build that trust. Innovation is the key to boosting access and other improvements. Transparency is the key to strengthening public understanding and engagement. And efficiency is the key to being responsible stewards of public resources. I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Judge Clement. Appreciate that presentation. And I think that I like how you led things off with you're asking for about 71% less increase of funding from last year. I think
I was hoping you'd like that.
committee member probably appreciates that. So thank you for being fiscally responsible. Last year, I talked to a lot of court administrators and judges across the state who really appreciates, even though there may be some heartburn with integrating the case management system. In general, most folks really are appreciative that we're trying to be more united in a case management system aspect. And so I really appreciate both of you taking the lead and integrating that, which leads me to my question. Roughly, what percentage of trial courts have come online, and kind of where are we at with that? It may be more of a question for Judge Boyd or yourself, unless you know.
Well, I can tell you that our first report is due to the legislature on March 1st. So our team is pulling together the data and figures for that report now. I can give you, and Tom will correct me if I'm wrong, I can give you a little snapshot. We've brought on Ottawa County, and we're working with Grand Traverse, Antrim, and Leelanau. They are on their way, and we've begun pre-work with Ingham County, but that report will have more detailed information on all of that.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Have her first. Question from Representative Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Chief Justice, for your presentation. I actually have two questions, if that's all right, if you'll indulge me. First, I noticed there's a section of boilerplate for problem-solving courts that combines all the problem-solving courts into basically like one bucket. Can you kind of explain the reasoning for that and how that will work?
So this was an effort by our team to increase transparency and flexibility. So as we need to move things around based on what the actual courts are using, it was just an effort for us to be able to be as transparent as possible. Although if there's a desire to leave it how it's been, we're not opposed to that.
Okay, I was just curious. I didn't know if there was like some instances where money was left over because money wasn't used from one court, but there was a greater need in another. So
That's exactly what we're experiencing, and so we just want that flexibility so that if there's new mental health courts and we need to shift money because they have more participants, that we're able to do that.
great, thank you. And then other question is around the recommendations for the salary increases for Supreme Court justice. I know you mentioned that Circuit Court is based on inflationary increases. Can you explain why the difference there, why it's different for Circuit Court versus Supreme Court?
So the Supreme Court is that salary is decided by the State Officers Compensation Commission. That recommendation comes from them and then comes to the legislature and needs to be approved. Several years ago, the Court of Appeals and the trial courts were tied to the Supreme Court. That's no longer the case, so they get generally annual increases. So there's a separation there.
Okay. Is it possible then to, now that it's level set or assuming that this proposal goes through, it would be level set, that there's a way to tie it to inflationary increases moving forward?
No. The requirement that the Supreme Court salaries be decided by SOC is in the Constitution, so we would need to change that.
Thank you.
Representative Leitner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Justice Clement and Judge Boyd, for being here today. I have a couple of questions. I have one on each of yours, a follow-up, so if you will give me some latitude.
We could indulge you in two questions.
That'd be great. Okay, so the first one is in regards to the judicial salary adjustments. As you guys know, I'm not unfamiliar with that process. And I know that there was an increase last year of about 10% in last year's budget, or the 23 budget. And, when we're dealing with the inflation issue for, just the normal working families here in Michigan, we've been asking people to tighten their belts as well. We have, in the last year, continued to increase taxes on them, things of that matter. And I know you guys have you can have some discussions and weight in that conversation too, as it's kind of an issue in regards to personal income tax as well. But, when we sat at the CREC Consensus Revenue Estimating Conference a couple of weeks ago, the economist said, yeah, people are getting higher wages, but they still don't feel it at all because it's not keeping up with inflation. They expect it to be relatively flat in the next couple of years. So as we are basically telling our constituents and the residents that we represent here in Michigan that you just got to hang in there and continue to work hard for basically the same money, how do we justify adding money to judicial salaries? And I understand the SOC part, it's a recommendation. They recommend it for the legislature as well. However, we, obviously haven't taken that either. So in this time of high inflation, high cost of everything, how do we justify to the 90,000+ people we represent why we're going to give out raises to justices? I'm sorry.
Yeah. My response to that would be that the Supreme Court justice salaries were frozen in 2002. The raise that you mentioned was a one-time raise, and there isn't an inflationary increase every year. If there was a small inflation,
Same with us.
right? Yeah, absolutely understandable. If there was, where the salary would be today would be significantly higher than the number that we asked SOC for a recommendation of. So it's definitely a difficult conversation to have. What we're doing is looking at the judiciary as a whole and the disparity, not just in Michigan, but compared to other states.
Yeah, and just as a tidbit to that, we have this situation amongst us, even in the legislature, executive branch. I mean, we have governor's staff that make more than the governor. And I would argue that she has a lot more responsibility overall, or at least that's the perception. Staff, we know, and I can tell you my staff does great work to help make me look good. I think they deserve more money than me sometimes, especially for putting up with me. Right, Robin? But anyways, I digress. So that's just kind of where I'm at, right now in regards to that. Just because we have this inflationary issue and we have a lot of constituents still struggling, and I'm just not sure I'm there yet. But anyways, on the other one, it's in regards to the case-wide management data system, yeah. And my question on that is, obviously, we appropriated for $150 million, which you mentioned in here. And I know you said the report is coming due on March 1st, but of that $150 million, and you said the report's coming, but can you guesstimate about how much money of that $150 million is spent now, considering the project isn't done yet, and there's a request for additional money for ongoing costs when the project's not even done, the money isn't all spent even yet?
So let me take your second question first, and then maybe Tom can help with the first one. So there's a difference between the money that was appropriated, the $150 million for the case management system. That is different than the ongoing funding. The ongoing funding that we're asking for is for FTEs to keep the system going. The existing system. No. What do you mean by? I'm sorry. What do you mean by
the existing case management systems or the new one? Because not all the courts are on the new case management
Correct.
system.
So think about it like a factory. The $150 million is to help build the factory, but to keep the factory running, we need people, and we need to constantly making improvements, like cybersecurity. And so that ongoing funding, once the $150 million is spent, bringing all of the courts onto the system, so we're all on one system, that is the ongoing funding that it will cost to run the system and make those improvements every year.
So in that question, you anticipate having the factory built by the end of this year?
No,
because we're looking at the 25 budget, right? So you're wanting ongoing for 25, but the factory is not even built yet.
The $150 million is for to bring on the rest of the trial courts, and I believe we have 5 years to do that.
So it's in work project money, right?
Yes, correct.
Thank you, Rep. Leitner. Moving on, Representative Mincer.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for being here today. I appreciate it. My question really involves trial courts. I represent Mount Clemens and Clinton Township, who share a trial court. A lot of that is funded by fines and fees. So that means Clinton Township and Mount Clemens owe a heck of a lot of money, making up the difference annually. We're talking big amounts. So has there been any discussion about changing the funding formula so these small communities, Mount Clemens has less than 15,000 people, aren't overly burdened with paying for that?
Do you want to tackle that one?
Sure. Thank you, Representative. So the conversation over the way that trial courts are funded certainly begins in 1963. It takes speed when the courts are created. There's Court of Appeals cases in the 80s, but there's a Michigan Supreme Court case on the issue of court funding in People versus Cunningham that launches this issue into the legislative arena. The legislature responded by doing two things. One is adding Section 769.1K1B3 to the code, which allows a trial court to add costs to individual criminal defendants' cases. However, the second thing that happened is that changes sunset. That sunset is due to expire again this May. We're working with Chair Breen and other members of the legislature, including Chair Wilson, to propose a different way of going forward. The court that you describe, your court, is a third-class court, which means they've essentially elected to have a court. They don't have to. They could revert to Macomb County. Macomb County could take that court over, and your local funding units wouldn't have any more financial obligation. So only when we started, 13 counties had courts like that, city courts, courts of the third class. We're down to 6. Macomb is one of the 6 counties. So there are definitely options, and we would be happy to discuss with you what's going on with the recommendations that Chair Breen will be taking up very soon. Again, it's a very long story. I'd be happy to meet with you privately. The legislature created and the governor appointed the Trial Court Funding Commission, which finished its work in 2019 and made a variety of recommendations on this very topic. So the answer to your question is yes, absolutely. We're working on it hard, working on it with the leadership, and hopefully we'll have options to go forward very soon.
That is music to my ears. Thank you very much.
Representative Cavett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chief Justice, Judge, for being here today. Excuse me. First of all, I just want to say thank you for coming to Sheboygan. It was well received, and we really appreciate it. There was a lot of buzz about that in our community. But I guess I'm looking more, well, I'm a fan of the YouTube channels also, by the way. Looking for a clarification on the amount of FTEs you had for scale support. I thought you said a different number than what was in the slide, so I was just looking for some clarification on that. Page 16, I have.
Okay. 3. It's 3 FTEs.
Okay. I thought you had a different number than that. It is 3 FTEs?
It's 3 FTEs for this area, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Representative Brixey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a dumb question, I'm sure. So on your juvenile clean slate slide, I noticed that there's some counties missing, Wayne County, Ingham County, and I'm just wondering, can you explain the graphic to me? I'm sure it's something dumb that it's page 11.
Good morning, Representative. On the list on the right, I think that's a partial list, and you can see the caret there. If we were on the interactive dashboard, we would go down. Let me double check that and provide feedback directly to your question.
The pie chart, I just figured Wayne would be large, and I wondered where Ingham was, and they're not on there, but that's probably because they're broken up into multiple. I don't know why, but anyway. Okay, so I can go on the dashboard and click down. Thank you.
Yeah, but we'll follow up on that, because I agree with you. I would have expected Wayne to be a bigger piece of the pie.
It's not, yeah, it doesn't look like it's included in the pie.
Oh, sorry. These are the JIS courts.
Okay, that's what I knew was a dumb question.
Yeah,
So
nope.
can you explain that to me? What does that mean?
Yeah, so that it's actually a great question as we talk about the statewide case management system. Once all of the courts are on the statewide case management system, you'll see Wayne County on here. You'll see all the counties on here
So these are just the ones that have made the change to this.
that were either on it or have merged over to JIS.
Thank you. I
So
guess it wasn't that dumb of a question.
No, it's a perfect question. So about 80% of the courts, 75 to 80% of the courts are on the Supreme Court's computer system.
Okay.
Some of the larger circuit courts, including Wayne, are not yet. So one of the real advantages to statewide case management is the Chief Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court and I won't have to sit up here and show you a graph that doesn't include Michigan's biggest county because we'll have one system of data.
And when will that happen?
Well, that's the process we're involved in right now as it relates to the 5-year program. So we have had conversations with Wayne. We're in detailed conversations with Oakland. Saginaw is in line to move over. So it's happening now, and you and I, our court, the 30th Circuit, is moving on now. So one of the tricks to this process, Ingham highlights. and that is the private vendor that has serviced Ingham for years doesn't want to lose Ingham, and so they're not being really helpful as we move towards that direction. And this is something I can tell you about directly because I was in an Ingham-funded court, the 55th District, and I moved away from that vendor a decade ago to go to the state system because it's a much higher quality, direct and Michigan-controlled system, providing better resources and better answers. And we're in that battle right now with our colleagues at the Ingham Circuit.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you
And
very
they-
much.
and they're great allies. We're very happy with the judges of the 30th Circuit Court.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the presentation, Justice Clement, and thank you, Judge Boyd. Thank you all the members for the great questions that came about. Thank you. We'll definitely be in touch.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Moving on to the next part of our agenda, we're going to call forth the Honorable Chief Judge of the Michigan Court of Appeals, Michael Gadola.
Good morning.
Morning.
Chair Wilson, Majority Vice Chair Weiss, Minority Vice Chair Leitner, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to address you this morning concerning the fiscal year 2025 budget of the Michigan Court of Appeals. As Chief Justice Clement would be very happy to point out to you, I'm much older than she is, which means I'm not very technology savvy. So my presentation to you today is going to be decidedly low tech. I think all of you have a copy of my prepared remarks in front of you. So I'll launch into those. Our current year budget of roughly $26.4 million represents just 0.1747% of all general fund expenditures in fiscal year 2024. Our recommended budget of roughly $27.3 million for FY25 represents 0.1909% of recommended GF expenditures for next year. This relatively small appropriation does not, however, begin to represent the important role our court plays in our state's one court of justice. The Michigan Court of Appeals is the last stop for the vast majority of all appellate litigation in our state. While the Supreme Court has the final word, the reality is that for most litigants, our court represents their last chance to secure justice. In 2023, our court's 25 judges disposed of over 4,600 cases, with 90% of our cases being disposed of in 18 months or less. Over 5,000 cases were filed in the court in 2023. This marked a return to our pre-pandemic numbers, when for the 5 years before 2020, our filings were routinely in excess of 5,000 cases per year. So we can now safely say that we have survived the COVID era and come out the other side just as strong as ever. While we have fully returned to in-person oral argument, as a result of our COVID experience and technology upgrades, we can now allow lawyers to appear remotely when needed, preserving their ability to argue their clients' causes when it might otherwise not be possible or practical for them to do so. I'd also mention as a side note, our court does upload our oral arguments to YouTube within 24 to 48 hours of oral argument, so those can be watched by the public in real time over Zoom and thereafter on YouTube. We continue to manage the Court of Claims docket as efficiently and effectively as possible under the direction of new Chief Judge Brock Swartzel, who is in the audience here today and who I'm sure would be thrilled to answer any questions you might have concerning the Court of Claims. There were 188 new filings in the Court of Claims in 2023. This was a low number. Typically, the filings in the court are above 200 and reached as many as 272 as recently as 2020. The court disposed of 217 cases last year, and I just want to thank you all. We're very grateful for the 2 senior research attorneys you funded in the current budget to assist the judges of the court, the 4 judges of the Court of Claims, in their work. I had hoped to be able essentially to conclude my remarks at this point and to tell you simply that we support the governor's recommendation for fiscal year 25 and then open myself to questions. But unfortunately, there's one item that arose just within the last week or two that I must bring to your attention and ask for your help with. Our court has been working with the executive branch to move our operations from private lease space to state-owned facilities. Over the last 20 years, the court has moved 4 offices to state-owned buildings, leaving just our offices in Troy in private lease space. That lease expires in November of 2026. The court found an opportunity to renovate existing space in Cadillac Place in Detroit to accommodate the judges and the staff in the Troy office. And as I'm sure you know, many of our judges are housed in Cadillac Place. The bulk of our staff is in Cadillac Place currently, and we have 2 courtrooms in Cadillac Place. So this move would involve moving 3 of our judicial chambers to Detroit and the staff of our clerk's office in that Troy location. So we found an opportunity to move that space out of Troy and into Cadillac Place. The initial cost of the renovations was estimated to be $910,000. We created a work project, and it was funded at a level of $1 million. The project is underway, architectural drawings are complete, and 2 acceptable bids for the project were received last month. Both bids, unfortunately, exceed $1.52 million, and recall that the initial estimates for the project were $910,000. We've already committed $138,000 from the work project for architect fees, DTMB fees, and other costs. It's expected that it would take an additional $765,000 to complete the project, which includes a $100,000 contingency for additional change orders that may arise. The court is at a crossroads with this project. If the renovations can't be funded, the court would have to renegotiate a lease extension with the current space in Troy, which we would like not to do. The final year of the current lease will cost the state over $450,000, which means that signing a lease extension would cost the state over $2.25 million over the 5-year life of the lease. If the project's completed, however, the state would no longer bear that expense, as all Court of Appeals operations would then be housed in state-owned buildings, and this in turn means that the requested appropriation would be made up within less than 2 years. The court has brought this issue to the attention of the State Budget Office. They recommended that, given the timing, as I mentioned, this just came up within the last 10 days or so, they recommended that the court ask the legislature, you, directly for this additional funding. The State Budget Office sees the merit of the proposal, and it's my understanding that we have their full support in this request. Our Finance Director, Russ Rudd, is in the audience today and would be happy to follow up with the members and staff to work through the details of this request as the budget process moves forward. Thank you very much for your time and consideration, and at this point I would be happy to answer any questions you might have of me.
Thank you, Judge Gadola, for the presentation. And just to touch base on the final item that you brought, is the ask, the $765,000, is that correct?
Yes.
And could you just briefly go back on, this project is renovations at the
Cadillac Place building, the former headquarters of General Motors on Grand Boulevard.
Right, okay. And as State Budget Office suggested, supplemental portion of the budget to get the funds quicker, or is it sufficient to be in the normal budget process?
I think it would be sufficient to put it in the FY25 appropriation in the bill that you'll be considering, because we do have the $1 million set aside. So, and we've already spent effectively, or at least committed, $138,000. So we could draw down those funds during the current fiscal year. We'd need them, the $765, beginning October 1st in order to finish the project. And again, with the lease expiring in November of 26. We'd move our judges in, I think, as soon as the space is ready.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that for me, and
Sure.
Definitely let us continue the conversation on that. I'll open it up to any members that may have questions this time. Seeing no questions. Thank you, Judge Gadola, for coming forth, and looking forward to working with you throughout the budget season.
Likewise. Thanks very much. I appreciate your time.
We have a few more minutes with our subcommittee today. We do have a few cards that have been submitted. And just keeping in mind, as we have folks come forth based on our new rules. Make sure your comments are addressing the agenda item today, which is in regards to the FY 24-25 budget. First up, Cynthia Mifsud. If you're here, you can come forth, and you requested 2 minutes.
Thank you for having me. I just wanted to know, of this new budget that they want to have approved, is any of the funds going to be directed at oversight for probate courts? Because the probate court right now has absolutely no oversight, and we've got the elderly, who are most vulnerable people, being isolated. This is my mother, isolated for 14 months, no oversight at all. My mother had an estate plan in place that was completely thrown out and ignored. My mother's had sepsis twice. They've taken my mother's $275,000 estate, and who do I go to? I've spent over $216,000 on legal fees fighting for my own mother. And now I'm in appeals court, another $16,000. It's just ridiculous, and nobody's overseeing them.
Well, first I want to say thank you for coming forth with these concerns. Unfortunately, this committee does not address the oversight issue. That's probably for the Judiciary Policy Committee. We're on only the Appropriations Committee, so we actually couldn't answer that at this time.
Shouldn't money be appropriated to oversee a court that is, I mean, they're destroying families. I mean, my family will never be the same. My mom has 4 kids. My 64-year-old brother couldn't see his own mother for 14 months. Somebody should be overseeing this. It's wrong.
I'd definitely love to continue the conversation if you'd like to meet further after this, but this committee couldn't answer that question at this time. So thank you for coming forth. Next we have Lori.
I'm going to pass on it right now.
Okay, you're going to pass. Thank you. And then we also have Jody White. Says probate court concern. Just keeping in mind that your comments need to be addressing the judiciary budget for the fiscal year 24-25.
Actually, since listening, I have to secure the justice for the people, and under public scrutiny, we are the people coming, because we are the ones wondering about the case management system, because Wayne County isn't allegedly in it. And we like Wayne County because Wayne County allows the people to have all the documents in the Register of Actions, so that we can watch the behavior of the judges that are harming the citizens. And we love the YouTube, but we want the YouTubes to also stay on it, on the website, because again, we, under the canons for the judiciary, we're supposed to be the ones to do the public scrutiny, and so we're trying. You guys are representing us, and we appreciate that, but every time we come to discuss something about probate court, we get the same thing: oh, not today, we'll talk to you later. We will take him up to talk later, because we do want one justice court, and I appreciate, because one of the guys in here did a court of appeals for my family, and we won, but the probate judge never let us have our jury trial. So what's the point of having this wonderful judge in here, and then these justices leaving, who are supposed to be their superintendents to oversee, to protect us public, and we pay the money to do this, and it's not happening. So I appreciate you giving them the money, but I want to reiterate, I want the documents on the websites of the Register of Actions, because we are a recorded state where everything gets recorded so that we know what's going on. I love the YouTube so that we can watch on our own time. And then lastly, I do want to review the employees, because the ones that work at the probate court, they can do very bad things. They can push buttons and call in the courts, sheriffs, and then accuse you of false things. That happened to me when I was running for state rep, and I didn't win my state rep, but I got harmed by this group of people. So the reason why I'm telling you all this is because the people that, all these full-time employees and part-time employees, if you worked at Taco Bell and we found food in the taco, or we found someone spitting in your food, we would fire them. And right now, we the people are really feeling abused by these amazing people that are in a place of position because they're in a Judiciary office for a Judiciary position because of the state constitution. And we're here because the state constitution provides us with a judiciary. So I'm glad that you guys are funding them, but we do need some of these superintendents, justices, to help us with the oversight. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Jody, and definitely if we are able to connect you with the folks that are at the court system to address those concerns, we'd love to be able to do that. Seeing no other business before the committee, the Subcommittee on Judiciary Appropriations is adjourned.